Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about the Resident Evil series, and specifically about how things are about to change in the typical process, which is that for the last decade or so, Capcom has stuck to a very specific strategy that has been incredibly successful, which is new game and then a remake, right? We saw Resident Evil 7 and the Resident Evil 2 remake, which is absolutely perfect. Then we had Resident Evil 8. Then we had, of course, the Resident Evil 3 remake, which was kind of hated. But now we have just something interesting. We just had the Resident Evil 4 remake, which is absolute perfection. And now Resident Evil 9 is about to come out and looks absolutely perfect, right? But what comes next? On schedule, we're supposed to get another remake. So does that mean, are we going to get something like a Code Veronica remake? A remake of Resident Evil 5? Well, today we're talking about the leaks because the famous Resident Evil leaker Dusk Golem has been talking a lot about how the process is about to shift. And we're going to get not just one remake coming up, not just getting revealed this year, but two remakes. A Code Veronica remake, which I am out of my mind excited about, and also a complete reconstruction, a reinvention of Resident Evil Zero. Now, I want to be clear about something before we even go into this. There has been a growing group of Code Veronica haters over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, because now that Code Veronica, I feel like people are really getting into Resident Evil for the first time right now. And I do like the fact that as a classic Resident Evil fan, I do like the fact that they're now so playable, right? You can play them all on PC. A lot of them you don't even have to play emulated. A lot of them now are actually still on current storefronts. You could play the original trilogy of Resident Evil on your PlayStation 5 and all the remakes, or play them on your Steam Deck or anything. And I think now some people are playing Code Veronica for the first time, and Code Veronica is a very different game. It does have some of the weirdest monster design, but I personally love that. It does have some of the most backtracking, and a lot of times the most, you don't have enough ammo, but here's a bunch of boss fights in a row. I have always enjoyed the difficulty and the strangeness of Code Veronica. I've always had such a love for Code Veronica, but I will admit that I'm curious to see a remake of that so much, because this story in Code Veronica is maybe one of the most important to the entire lineage of Resident Evil. Let's talk about these leaks. Let's talk about how this all kind of came about and why I think that the next 2 years, the next 3 years or so, this next era of Resident Evil is going to be different. And honestly, it's going to be so exciting. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. But now, let's get into it. So, honestly, they have been really advertising the hell out of Requiem. Requiem looks utterly fantastic, but this is sort of what Capcom does, right? Which is that they don't talk about the next project until the current one is fully released. They don't talk about the next Devil May Cry or Mega Man or Monster Hunter until this current game is completely sold, right? They're very good about laser focusing the entire fan base on a single project at once. And right now, obviously, they're very full steam ahead purely on Requiem, and for good reason. Honestly, Requiem looks great, but there has been some interesting rumblings ever since the remake of Resident Evil 4 came out. This game being so good, it kind of got people mentally cooking, where they started to say, okay, we didn't realize that Capcom would be so bold. They completely changed Resident Evil 4. If you play the OG versus the remake, they shifted the tone. They changed the puzzles. They warped the dialogue in a way that made it honestly a lot better than the already damn near perfect original. The remake is so good. It stands alongside it, not attempting to replace it. 10 out of 10, will parry chainsaws again. Now, what's crazy is that at the end of that remake, there's a lot of hints about Resident Evil 5. Lots of stuff that people think, okay, if they're going to do Resident Evil 5 next, Resident Evil 5 is so co-op heavy. Resident Evil 5 is so goofy. It's so crazy. At times, it was a bit controversial, especially during its release time. But a lot of people are saying, okay, how do you remake 5 next? Well, I don't think they're going to. There has been a lot of talks about tweets from the people that originally worked on Resident Evil 5. This actress, of course, with all acting, all games and stuff, you try and find someone that's going to mocap and stuff like that. The dude who played Claire Redfield is still an actor. The lady who still played Sheva, she's still obviously around. Well, she has been teasing that something is about to happen coming up in March. I've got a few fun things lined up in March. Stay tuned. Resident Evil 5, Shiva Olimar, voice actor Resident Evil 5, 30 years of Resident Evil. Now, a lot of people are taking this as maybe it's hinting that they're about to do a giant reveal of a Resident Evil 5 remake. Well, Dusk Golem came out and said, yes, there is remakes coming up, but it is not Code Veronica. It's not Resident Evil 5. It is Code Veronica instead. There is not a Resident Evil 5 remake that's going to be announced this year. That's going to happen eventually. It sounds like, according to the leaks, it's of course on the schedule. They are going to do that eventually. It seems like they're going to remake everything except Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6, I don't think can be fixed, if we're being honest. Later this year, you're going to see a Resident Evil remake that starts with a C and ends with Ode Veronica. It's going to be announced, I promise you. Her thing is not another remake of RE5. So people are thinking that this is probably either going to be like a merch drop, or there have been those CG movies, you know, like Resident Evil Death Island and Resident Evil Vengeance and stuff. There's been a lot of like CGI movies that are very, very separate from the mainline games and stuff. But what's interesting to this, to me, that really kind of struck me is that them really starting to ramp up the Code Veronica talk. I almost think it's sort of putting a direct focus on the fact that this era of current Resident Evil is about to be sunset. Now, let me explain. I think that, honestly, this looks fantastic. I think Resident Evil Requiem looks good. But I almost think that they're going to start to try and do something that's like a retro timeline. And the reason I think that is that the fact that they're bringing back Leon, the fact that they're bringing back the destroyed ruins of Raccoon City, they're doing a lot of stuff that feels like a throwback with Requiem. So following that up, I think that the best option is not just to go back to the characters and bring them back and do new stories. It's almost to start to make new lanes for like 90s style stories, but being made in current day. And he actually goes further. I may be the minority, but I'm glad that we're getting the next two remakes. They can be improved in a variety of ways. There'll be the new fans that haven't played them more than likely. Are you more excited for Code Veronica or Zero remake? Now, Dusk Golem has a crazy good track record. People get mad about Dusk Golem because he is wrong occasionally. He has talked about the fact that the Silent Hill 2 remake is supposed to get a Born from a Wish DLC. It still never showed up, and God, it's been almost 2 years at this point, but he has been incredibly accurate specifically about Resident Evil. He is the guy who's leaked stuff about Resident Evil Village years before it was revealed, and it was 100% accurate. He's the guy who leaked stuff about Resident Evil 4 Remake years before anybody else, and he was 100% accurate. So when he talks about these remakes, I trust him extensively, right? You're not in the minority. Code Veronica and Zero are two of the three Resident Evil games I most wanted to see remade. And expanded, not on rails shooters of Operation Javier is my third. Honestly, I never expected a Zero remake. I thought hoping for it was a lost cause. I'd actually first learned about these games back into 11 months before I revealed them publicly. 11 months were excruciating. Even now I'm holding back because Resident Evil 9 comes first. Now, he has talked about the fact that the remake of Zero and the remake of Code Veronica is going to stay pretty close to what it was. In the same way that Resident Evil 4 is an expansion of the ideas of OG4. There's extra side quests and extra bosses and extra cool stuff that makes it the same Resident Evil 4, but also just so much bigger, so much better, so much more grandiose. They're doing that with Code Veronica. Zero requires a much bigger pivot because Zero was a very strange game. It predominantly took place on a train, and if you haven't played Resident Evil Zero, it has like this weird fake co-op system where you're constantly handing items back and forth. The two characters you play as, you just have a switch character button, and a lot of times they're like a dumbwaiter or something, or a vent, and you're constantly passing items back and forth, but you can't play as both characters simultaneously. It seems like Zero is going to get remade to be much more functional, but also maybe fully co-op, which would require them to totally redo the game. Now, Dusk Golem has said that Zero is going to be a bit of a smaller project, and Code Veronica is like the next RE4 sized project, right? This to me is so crazy. I think Resident Evil Code Veronica and Zero were picked ahead of other potential options for a variety of reasons, including Capcom's surveys. Capcom do take their surveys seriously, as they're the most clear-cut way to ask fanbase questions, and this was the prevailing mentality. Within the fanbase, is the server asked, which other RE games would you like to see remade? And Zero and Code Veronica were the most in need of a remake. But there's other factors. Another big factor is that if there's people at Capcom that want to make the project, I think that helped. Zero especially, since several people that work at Capcom and M2 worked on the original Resident Evil Zero and may have ideas how to realize it all these years later. So it is interesting to me that I think that part of the reason that I think Resident Evil has grown so much in this last couple of years, and I see this as a fan that's been playing Resident Evil since the very, very start. I've been here for every game, every release, every hype cycle. I do think that something that makes the Resident Evil series feel different is that it never feels like it's trying to betray its fan base. It really does feel like Capcom cares not just about sales numbers and hype cycles and pre-orders. It does feel like Capcom truly cares about what those die-hard fans think. It really does feel like there are people inside of there, and they're literally sitting there going, okay, how can we improve this in every single way, but still make it feel like the original? And that's not an easy art. I heard a quote years and years ago by one of the people I think at Nintendo talking about the Ocarina of Time remake for the Nintendo 3DS. And he talked about how mentally difficult that was to make, because going back, and he used the analogy of repainting a mosaic. Imagine if you painted this giant painting that's your entire life's work, and then 20 years later you go back and you have to redo that mosaic. It's difficult. It's hard. It's hard to find that tone, that beat, that mental space. And I think what Capcom has done good is that they found a way to sort of find that way where it is the same mosaic, but also better. Capcom is not afraid of changes. Resident Evil 4 Original is hilarious. It's goofy. It's so absolutely cartoonish at times. But simultaneously, the remake keeps the goofiness at times while making it a true horror game. I am endlessly impressed by Resident Evil. Resident Evil has always been one of my favorite things in the entire universe. And the fact that it's gotten better with age, it's wild to witness. The only misstep they've made really is Resident Evil 3 Remake. And, I think we can kind of forgive the one misstep because it's been all bangers other than that. How do you guys feel about a Code Veronica remake? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. This video was probably longer than I intended it to be, but you guys know I love Code Veronica. This to me is the W of all W's. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.